Now we will create the patient's mandibular angle. We'll again use 30 milligrams of hyaluronic acid. The patient's head is turned toward us. We carefully examine the current angle of the patient's body. Yes, this current angle is quite nice for us, but we would prefer it to be adjusted to be a bit closer to 90 degrees. We would like to adjust this angle to be slightly higher, ideally in the range of 100 to 120 degrees. Therefore, we will create a completely new virtual chin point for clarity. So, take a moment to observe the patient's current chin point closely, and by establishing the new point slightly higher, I will effectively widen the angle formed between the tip of the chin and the mandibular angle, enhancing the overall facial profile. As I said, I will try to achieve a more feminine appearance. I am doing a superficial injection again. Here, you can utilize various techniques by carefully injecting into the subcutaneous fat tissue or just beneath the skin surface. The deeper you inject, the more pronounced, masculine, and well-defined the overall appearance will become. The more superficial you stay, the sharper and more feminine features you can achieve with less product. In this sense, I have a technique I use, friends. Look, I am almost situated just below the intradermal level of the skin. So I'm not going very deep into the fat tissue. Look, my needle cannula can't move left or right. The layer I'm in is almost inside the dermis. I'm extremely superficial. Now, I've carefully marked the patient's lower jaw angle. And look, I've taken a step back a bit. I want to make the new mandibular angle at this white area. I've reached the desired spot. I've put my finger beneath it. I carefully squeeze between my two fingers and gently push my cannula forward, and I distinctly hear a click, signaling that I've securely anchored it in place. So I've come right to the surface. If I go a bit further, I'll pierce the skin and come out. When I push my cannula, I only penetrate the skin and cannot reach deeper fat tissue. Look, my mandibular angle is still here and I'm higher up. Now, this specific point marks my new mandibular angle. I'm carefully placing a specific product here, precisely between point 1 and point 2, using a bolus-style technique to ensure it is effectively delivered into the skin. I'm also checking it with my finger. I don't want my product to spread too much into the surrounding tissues, friends. This is the new mandibular angle from my perspective. Now, after carefully positioning it, I'm attempting to create a precise and sharp trace there using gentle upward movements, and I've slightly moved forward, just a bit in front of that designated line. I've also left a bit of product there. By moving a little further forward, I'm attempting to clearly establish my new line and boundaries at that specific point in time. Once more, if I need to go deep to penetrate the skin layers, I often find myself becoming superficial instead, waiting for my cannula to also become superficial alongside my finger, while I ensure that my product remains in place. Now, I'm currently attempting to create a skeletal structure within the skin by carefully and superficially scanning a triangular area located inside the specific point I have previously created. This technique is quite unique. It's quite distinct from the technique we typically employ in subcutaneous fat tissue. This is an application done in a stationary manner, where your cannula doesn't move left or right, just goes back and forth, remaining radially in place. Yes, I have given approximately 0.3 of my product to a total of 10 points so far in this process. Now, I'll carefully enter from the jawline area to make that specific point a bit more defined. I carefully entered through the chin trace for the injection procedure once again. In these injections, dear friends, you should avoid injecting into the middle 1/3 area completely and entirely. Inject into the back 1/3 and front 1/3 areas. Do not inject at this midpoint. The definitions you establish here will initially form a pleasing and straight line, but over time that line will begin to sag downwards. Therefore, our goal is to create tension from the back and front. Therefore, my injection point is precisely that specific point. However, the specific entry point for the injection is here. But my injection will begin shortly after this particular point in time, in the back 1/3 plane. Look, I'm extremely superficial. I'm making progress by creating space within the tissue, similar to subcision. I'm not located in the subcutaneous fat. I'm close to the surface. I moved further ahead. And yes, I've reached my target point. Look, I've achieved the whitening. Now I'm carefully determining the exact point I want to go back to. This should be my end point. I've carefully pushed my cannula forward again and clearly marked my end point here. If I continue, I will penetrate. But I no longer have the chance to progress under the skin like this. At this extremely superficial level, I'm carefully injecting approximately 0.1 of the product and skillfully creating a supportive scaffold here using retrograde injection techniques to ensure optimal results. This is not a technique you will see very often. Many of my colleagues who try it at first often feel somewhat uneasy. After the procedure, a bumpy area remains at this location. They worry whether this tissue will tolerate it or if it will be resorbed. Within just half an hour, the patient appears to look significantly better. This newfound sharpness remains evident, and the varied appearance on the skin surface gradually disappears. About a day later, we successfully achieve an incredibly sharp and well-defined mandibular angle. So in this sense, don't be anxious about injecting this superficially, as the product I use is a thick 30 mg hyaluronic acid filler. Nevertheless, the overall effect is a gentle material that the skin can easily tolerate without irritation. You don't need to worry about hyaluronic acid staying on the surface like this, friends. Yes, I have completed my injection at this point. So far, we have successfully defined a new, more refined jawline using a total of 6 innovative beauty products. Now we will ensure that it effectively integrates with this specific point. We will highlight this point by injecting into this area.
I'm going back to the front of the face. We are determining our entry point.
We are in the pre-jaw area. No deep injection is available again. As we have been in the past, we may appear superficial, yet we are slightly deeper. Now we are a little deeper into the subcutaneous fat tissue, friends. My cannula is more comfortable and can move better. I don't need to stay that superficial at this point because I'm not defining a new angle. I'm a bit deeper into the fat tissue. By gently applying my 0.4 product at this specific point between my 2 fingers, I am effectively supporting and enhancing the overall condition of this area for optimal results. I am sharpening the angle at this point by making forward and backward injections.